The chamber of the Galactic Council was alive with activity, a grand amalgamation of life forms from every corner of the galaxy. The architecture itself seemed to hum with energy, a swirling mixture of holographic displays, crystalline pillars, and bioluminescent accents that reflected the diversity of its occupants. Massive forms of reptilian beings loomed beside delicate, translucent entities, and a chorus of murmurs echoed as diplomats debated the agenda for the session. Amid the grandeur, one figure stood out, not by size or physical presence, but by the quiet intensity he exuded. Ambassador Elias, the sole representative of humanity, was a stark contrast to the towering, multi-limbed or vibrantly scaled beings around him. Clad in a sharp, dark suit that bore the insignia of Earth's unified government, his sharp green eyes scanned the room with measured precision. Where other species displayed physical dominance, Elias embodied the quiet confidence of someone who carried the weight of his kind's survival on his shoulders. The Krennic Dominion's ambassador, a hulking creature with obsidian scales and a crown of spiked horns, stepped forward. Its voice was a guttural growl, amplified through the translation systems. Once again, we bring to this Council's attention humanity's refusal to comply with resource-sharing agreements. Their sector hoards critical materials while they expand their fleets unchecked. The murmurs in the room grew louder. Many species turned toward Elias, their gazes a mix of curiosity and suspicion. The Krennic had long been one of the most militarized factions in the galaxy, and their words carried significant weight. Some council members leaned forward eagerly, ready to accept the accusations without question. Elias raised his hand, a simple gesture, yet it commanded silence. The quiet authority he radiated made even the Krennic hesitate for a moment. The Krennic Dominion speaks with conviction. Elias began, his voice steady and calm. But not with honesty. Allow me to clarify the facts. He activated a small holographic device, projecting data streams into the air. This shows the flow of resources in our sector over the last standard cycle. As you can see, Earth has complied with all trade quotas. In fact, our exports exceed the Council's requirements by 14%. The projection shifted to a chart comparing planetary contributions. Humanity's efficiency was evident, their output higher than that of most established civilizations. The murmurs shifted from skepticism to surprise. Even the Krennic ambassador's confidence wavered momentarily, though it quickly hardened into a glare. Furthermore, Elias continued, we have not expanded our fleet for offensive purposes. Every vessel added to our armada is marked for defense and relief efforts. We have been transparent about this with the Council. He turned his gaze directly to the Krennic ambassador. Which is more than I can say for some. The tension in the chamber was palpable. Council members exchanged glances, and a few representatives from smaller factions nodded in agreement. Yet, the Krennic remained defiant, their ambassador stepping closer. You speak of transparency, human, but your actions tell another story. If your kind is so peaceful, why has humanity refrained from taking its rightful place among the stars? You cower within your borders, hiding behind treaties and words. Elias's jaw tightened, but his expression remained composed. His voice dropped slightly, each word deliberate. We have our reasons. Reasons that do not concern this Council, yet. That single word, yet, hung in the air like a thundercloud. The room fell silent as the weight of it settled. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the Krennic ambassador's features. Others in the chamber leaned forward, drawn by the unspoken gravity of Elias's words. A representative from the Eleutherii, a species known for their logic-driven diplomacy, broke the silence. Their shimmering form flickered as they spoke, their voice a symphony of chimes. Ambassador Elias, your restraint is commendable, but your vagueness is unusual. Why does humanity, a species known for adaptability and ambition, remain so passive in the face of Krennic provocations? Is there something we should be made aware of? Elias met their gaze, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it seemed as though he might deflect the question entirely. Then, he stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. There is, he said finally, his voice steady but tinged with something that felt like grief. But the weight of that truth is not one I can unveil lightly. Know this, humanity's passivity is not weakness. It is the restraint of a species that has already borne the consequences of trust misplaced. Perhaps soon, it will be time for this council to learn what we have endured. The chamber erupted into hushed whispers. Even the most aloof council members appeared intrigued, their curiosity piqued by the veiled implications. Elias stood silently amid the cacophony, his stoic expression betraying nothing further. Yet, in the way his hands gripped each other behind his back, there was a subtle sign, an unspoken anguish, barely contained. The Krennic ambassador sneered, but even they seemed less certain than before. Empty words, human. If you have a truth to share, then speak it. Otherwise, your insinuations are meaningless. Elias turned to face them fully, his voice unwavering. Be careful what you wish for. Elias's voice, steady and measured, cut through the ambient whispers of the council chamber. You ask why humanity has been silent, why we have not expanded, why we tread so cautiously. Very well. Let me tell you why. The holographic device on his wrist activated, casting a pale blue glow that painted the solemn features of his face. A projection of Earth emerged in the center of the chamber, rotating slowly, its familiar continents glowing softly under a shroud of atmospheric clouds. For a moment, the beauty of the planet held the council's attention. This was Earth. Elias began, his voice carrying an undercurrent of pain. Our cradle, our home. For millennia we thrived, endured, and grew upon its surface, shaping it as it shaped us. But one day, that bond was severed. The holographic Earth began to flicker. A swarm of glowing red lights appeared, descending upon the planet. The council chamber filled with the simulated sound of alarms, the cries of chaos, the thunder of orbital bombardments. The Krennic's signature weapons rained down like vengeful gods, targeting cities, ecosystems, and cultural landmarks without discrimination. Without warning, Elias continued, his voice unwavering, though the strain behind his words was evident. The Krennic Dominion launched an attack on Earth. No provocation. No declaration of war. They came as cowards, in the dead of night, obliterating billions before we could even respond. The projections shifted. Earth's surface became a fiery wasteland, its cities reduced to rubble. New York, Shanghai, Rio de Janeiro, names that carried the weight of history were now nothing more than smoldering craters. Famous landmarks, symbols of unity and progress, were vaporized in an instant. The Eiffel Tower toppled, the pyramids of Giza consumed by dust, the Great Wall of China shattered. The gasps of some council members punctuated the room, but Elias pressed on. We cried out for help, Elias said, his voice now sharper, cutting through the rising unease. We sent messages to this council, to every species we had ever known, pleading for assistance. Do you know how many responded? He let the silence stretch, his gaze sweeping over the gathered representatives. No one spoke. No one moved. None, he answered after an agonizing pause. Not one signal. Not one offer of aid. Humanity was left to burn, alone, while this council debated its precious neutrality. The hologram shifted again, showing not the devastation, but its aftermath. Images of survivors struggling in the ruins, their faces etched with despair and grief. Children huddled in makeshift shelters, their eyes wide with the kind of terror that strips away innocence. Families clinging to each other, surrounded by ash and rubble, as the sky above them glowed with an unnatural, toxic hue. 3 billion lives, Elias said, the weight of the number pressing against every syllable. Mothers, fathers, children. Scientists who could have cured your diseases. Artists who could have inspired your people. Voices, dreams, and futures, all silenced in a single, calculated act of malice. The council chamber was utterly still. Even the Krennic ambassador, previously so bold and smug, now shifted uncomfortably, their gaze refusing to meet Elias's. Our ecosystems were obliterated, Elias went on. Forests burned, oceans poisoned, species driven to extinction in hours. Earth was more than a home, it was a living world, a sanctuary we shared with countless forms of life. Now, It is nothing but a scar, orbiting a sun that can no longer sustain it. His voice softened, almost a whisper, but it carried an edge that resonated deeply. And still, we endured. The projection faded, leaving only the image of Earth as it was now, a lifeless, gray sphere, barren and unrecognizable. Elias let the image linger before continuing. When the smoke cleared, we realized the true cost of your inaction. Humanity did not just lose its home. We lost our trust. This council, this institution that claims to uphold peace and justice, turned a blind eye to genocide because it was easier to do nothing. His words were a blade, sharp and deliberate. The room, filled with beings of immense power and influence, felt small under the weight of his accusation. No one dared interrupt him. I accuse this council of complicity, Elias said, his voice now as hard as iron. Your neutrality, your apathy, enabled the Krennic to commit this atrocity. You were not the ones who fired the weapons, but your silence was just as deadly. One of the council members, a towering crystalline entity, spoke hesitantly, its voice like the tinkling of breaking glass. Ambassador Elias, we did not fully understand the extent. You understood enough. Elias interrupted coldly. You knew we were under attack. You knew the Krennic's methods. You chose to prioritize your own safety over the principles this council was built upon. Tell me, does that neutrality comfort you now, knowing what was lost? The crystalline entity fell silent, retreating into its seat. Others glanced nervously at one another, unable to meet Elias's piercing gaze. And as for the Krennic, Elias said, his attention now fixed on their ambassador. You speak of humanity as if we are weak, as if we are insignificant. Yet you found it necessary to exterminate us before we could truly join the galactic stage. What does that say about your fear of us? The Krennic ambassador tried to respond, but their voice faltered, their usual bravado conspicuously absent. The silence that followed was suffocating. Elias took a deep breath, letting his words hang in the air. We did not come here seeking revenge. Humanity does not crave vengeance, it craves justice. And it starts with this council acknowledging its failures. The hologram deactivated, leaving the chamber in a stark, oppressive quiet. Elias stood tall, his expression unwavering as he delivered his final words. When you allowed the Krennic to attack our home, you shattered more than a planet. You shattered the trust we placed in you. But humanity is still here. We survived your indifference. We survived their wrath. And we will ensure that no one else has to endure what we did. Elias's gaze swept across the chamber, his voice unyielding yet carrying an undertone of pride. You think the destruction of Earth broke humanity? That the ashes of our home meant the end of our species? No. It was in that darkness that we found our strength. The hologram reactivated, this time showing the chaotic aftermath of the Krennic bombardment. The remains of Earth's population, scattered across its surface, scrambled to survive amidst collapsing infrastructure, poisoned air, and dwindling resources. Cities, once monuments to progress, had become tombs of steel and stone. But amidst the devastation, there was movement, humanity's unyielding spirit refusing to surrender. We fled underground. Elias continued, his tone softening as the images shifted to vast, hastily constructed bunkers beneath the Earth's surface. We turned to what little we had left. There, in the bowels of a dying planet, humanity gathered. We shared what remained, pooled our knowledge, and began to rebuild, not for vengeance, but for survival. The hologram showed survivors huddled together. Scientists worked tirelessly in dimly lit labs, their faces streaked with soot but their determination shining through. Engineers cobbled together rudimentary life support systems while families clung to each other, finding strength in unity. The audience could see the raw, unpolished tenacity that defined humanity. Adversity is not new to us, Elias said, his voice gaining strength. It is in our blood. Each challenge we faced has shaped us, prepared us for the unthinkable. And when the unthinkable came, we did what we have always done, we adapted. The projection shifted again, this time showing Earth's orbit, where survivors had launched makeshift stations constructed from whatever debris could be salvaged. Repurposed satellites, stripped-down shuttles, and modular habitats began forming the framework of humanity's new frontier. In the vacuum left by the Council's indifference, we created our own future. Elias continued. We advanced in decades what should have taken centuries. Forced to innovate, we developed technologies that reshaped us. Weapons to defend, propulsion systems to escape, and artificial intelligence to optimize every effort. With every step, we became something more. The Council's attention was drawn to scenes of technological breakthroughs. Ships with sleek designs capable of faster-than-light travel, automated drones rebuilding shattered structures, and holographic interfaces displaying plans for entire colonies. Humanity's leap was undeniable, its ingenuity a testament to its refusal to fade into obscurity. But innovation wasn't enough, Elias said, the hologram fading to an image of distant stars. Earth was gone. Our home was no longer habitable, a wasteland of scorched soil and poisoned air. For every city we saved underground, we lost 10 above. For every life we secured, 1,000 were left behind. And so, we turned outward. The Council watched as scattered human colonies were established in distant corners of the galaxy. Small, isolated, but united by a single, unshakable purpose. Footage showed humans reaching out to alien species, trading knowledge, and building fragile alliances. Some species accepted their overtures, moved by humanity's determination to survive. Others remained skeptical, wary of the newcomers and their rapid technological rise. Rebuilding wasn't just about survival, Elias continued, his tone resolute. It was about ensuring that no species, human or otherwise, would endure what we did. We forged alliances, not with promises of power, but with a shared understanding of what it means to lose everything. The projection returned to Earth, its once vibrant surface now reduced to a barren, cratered expanse. Rivers had turned to lifeless streams of sludge, and forests were nothing more than skeletal remains. The sky, once a deep blue, now glowed a sickly orange. Elias's expression hardened as he gestured to the image. This is what remains of Earth, he said. A planet that once teemed with life is now a tomb. The cost of the Krennic's aggression. The price of this Council's silence. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Some representatives averted their eyes, their discomfort evident. Others shifted uneasily, guilt flickering in their expressions. Yet the Krennic ambassador remained motionless, their scaled visage betraying nothing. Elias pressed on. You sit here, cloaked in your neutrality, debating policies and protocols, while the evidence of your inaction stands before you. Earth is a scar that will never heal, a reminder of what happens when principles are abandoned for convenience. One of the Council members, a smaller insected species with quivering antennae, finally spoke, their voice hesitant. Ambassador Elias, what you have shown us is profound. But surely, humanity cannot place all blame upon this Council. The Krennic's actions are theirs alone, Elias interjected, his voice firm. And they will answer for them. But the Council enabled this. Your refusal to act, to enforce the very principles you claim to uphold, gave the Krennic the freedom to strike without consequence. The insectoid fell silent, their antennae drooping. Across the chamber, other representatives exchanged uneasy glances. The weight of Elias's words pressed heavily upon them. And yet, Elias said, his tone softening but no less resolute, we are still here. Humanity does not seek retribution. We do not come to this Council with demands for war or reparations. What we seek is recognition of what was lost, of what could have been done, and of the unity we must now forge to ensure this never happens again. The Krennic ambassador finally stirred, their deep voice breaking the quiet. You speak of unity, yet your species hides behind alliances and new toys. What can humanity truly offer this Council now, beyond tales of its suffering? Elias met their gaze, unflinching. What we offer, he said evenly, is proof that no matter how far one falls, there is always a way to rise. What we offer is the strength to stand against tyranny, even when we stand alone. The room fell silent once more. In that moment, it was clear, humanity's scars, though deep, were also its greatest strength. Elias stood at the center of the chamber, the weight of humanity's journey evident in his gaze. His voice was calm, deliberate, yet carried a resonance that made every word land with precision. "Let me make one thing abundantly clear," he began. "Humanity does not stand here seeking revenge. Retribution is a luxury of those who can afford to lose themselves in anger. For us, it has always been about survival and justice." A few murmurs rippled through the room, but Elias continued undeterred. "We endured what no species should endure. We faced annihilation, and instead of giving in to despair, we forged ourselves anew. But that does not mean we have forgotten. Earth's ashes may scatter through the void, but they have left their mark on us, a reminder of what was taken and why we must ensure it never happens again." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "Revenge is short-sighted. It is destruction without purpose. We do not crave it. Instead, we seek a galaxy where no species fears waking to the sound of orbital strikes, where no homeworld is turned into a wasteland in the name of greed or dominance. That is why we are here." The room was silent save for the faint hum of the Council's technology. Elias's unwavering composure contrasted sharply with the unease of the assembled representatives. He adjusted his stance slightly, his tone shifting to one of calculated diplomacy. "We understand survival," Elias continued. "We understand what it takes to protect one's people, to prioritize their future above all else. And so I ask you, how different are we truly? Each of you has known loss. You have fought for your people, for your worlds. Humanity is no different. But instead of turning that loss into a weapon, we turned it into a shield." He gestured subtly, and the holographic display shifted to show humanity's scattered colonies thriving against all odds. Stations orbiting hostile planets, cities carved into asteroids, and ships designed not just for war but for exploration and survival. "We rebuilt not out of hatred, but out of hope," Elias said. "We sought alliances, extended hands in friendship, even to those who doubted us. And while many of you turned away, there were those who stood with us. To them I say, humanity will never forget your solidarity in our darkest hours." He allowed a brief, genuine smile to cross his face before his tone turned steely once more. "But do not mistake our hope for naivety. We have rebuilt, not just ourselves, but the means to ensure no hand ever threatens us again." The room shifted. Some representatives leaned forward, tension palpable. Elias had not raised his voice, but his words carried an unmistakable weight. "Our technology has advanced," Elias continued. "Our fleets are no longer relics of an Earth that no longer exists. What you see now, what we have become, is a testament to what resilience and unity can achieve. But we have not deployed these fleets in conquest. We have not sought to expand through war, despite having every reason to." He fixed his gaze on the Krennic ambassador, his voice steady. "Restraint is not a sign of weakness. It is a choice. A choice born of a commitment to principles greater than power." The Krennic ambassador finally stirred, his scaled features twisting into a sneer. "Spare us your self-righteous speeches," he said, his voice low and cutting. "You speak of survival and justice as if they matter in the grand scheme of the galaxy. Humanity is broken, a species of scavengers clinging to scraps, too weak to claim what it desires." A murmur of disapproval echoed from some of the other representatives, but Elias remained composed, his expression unchanging. "Is that what you believe?" Elias asked softly, his voice laced with an icy calm. "That humanity's silence, our restraint, is born of weakness? Tell me, then, if we are so broken, why do you feel the need to diminish us at every turn?" The Krennic ambassador's sneer faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. "You bluff, human. A species that cannot defend its homeworld is no threat to us." Elias's expression hardened, his voice dropping to a near whisper that carried across the chamber. "Defending our homeworld was not an option when you attacked without warning. But we have not been idle since. You mistake our silence for submission. It is patience." The room grew colder, the tension mounting with every passing second. Elias took a step forward, his presence commanding. "We came here today not to threaten, but to remind you of one simple truth," he said, his words deliberate and cutting. "When you attacked our home, you didn't just destroy a planet. You forged something far greater than you could ever understand. You united us forever." A hush fell over the chamber. The Krennic ambassador leaned back, his earlier confidence visibly shaken. Around the room, other representatives exchanged uneasy glances, the gravity of Elias's words sinking in. "We are not here to boast," Elias continued, his voice unwavering. "We do not seek to intimidate. Humanity's strength is not in its weapons or fleets. It is in its resolve. In its ability to endure, to learn, and to adapt. That is why we survived you. That is why we are still standing here today." He allowed the silence to stretch, letting the weight of his final statement settle over the room. "Understand this," Elias said, his gaze sweeping across the council. "Humanity does not forget. And we do not break." For a moment, the chamber seemed to hold its breath, the echoes of Elias's declaration lingering like a challenge unspoken yet undeniably felt. Elias stood silently, his fingers brushing the edge of the council podium. With a subtle motion, he signaled to his team. The chamber dimmed, and a new holographic projection materialized in the air. It began with Earth's final moments, a vibrant, living world reduced to ash in a matter of hours. The orbital bombardment, relentless and cold, rained down upon cities, forests, and oceans. Landmarks crumbled, and the cries of humanity were drowned in the roar of destruction. The footage moved swiftly through scenes of despair, scorched landscapes, desperate survivors, and the hollow silence of a once thriving planet now turned to ruin. Gasps and murmurs echoed through the council chamber. For many, it was the first time they had seen the extent of the devastation. "Behold the cost of unchecked aggression," Elias said, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "This is what happens when ambition goes unchallenged. This is what happens when justice is silenced." The projection shifted, now showing humanity's resilience in the aftermath: bunkers, orbital stations, and fledgling colonies. Then, with deliberate timing, it transitioned to something new. Rows upon rows of sleek, formidable starships filled the hologram. A fleet, larger and more advanced than anything most species had ever conceived, loomed against the backdrop of space. The ships bore the unmistakable design of human ingenuity, efficient, unyielding, and brimming with power. The murmurs in the chamber grew louder, tinged with awe and fear. The Krennic ambassador stiffened, their earlier bravado melting into unease as the hologram zoomed in on the fleet, revealing its position at the borders of Krennic space. "Our fleet," Elias said, his tone cutting through the noise, "is not a threat. It is a reminder. A reminder that humanity does not forget. That we have learned, adapted, and prepared. We stand ready, not to conquer, but to ensure that what happened to Earth never happens again." The chamber erupted into whispered conversations. Representatives exchanged anxious glances. Some were visibly shaken, while others leaned forward, their faces marked by curiosity or concern. The Krennic ambassador's silence was deafening. Elias let the tension simmer before speaking again. "But understand this, we have no desire to use this fleet. It exists because we know now that no one else will defend us. It exists because the galaxy we believed to be bound by principles of unity and peace showed us its indifference." He turned, addressing the council directly, his voice resolute. "Today, humanity stands at a crossroads, and we offer you the same choice we have faced, to build or to destroy. We ask this council to act, not out of fear of humanity's strength, but out of recognition of its failure to prevent the tragedy that brought us here." The Krennic ambassador finally rose, their voice cracking with a mixture of anger and desperation. "This is a display of arrogance, not diplomacy. You dare to demand action from this council while threatening us with your armada? You are nothing more than a species of opportunistic scavengers, hiding behind your newfound toys." Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, a hint of pity in his gaze. "Threatening you? No. The fleet remains at your borders unmoving. It has not fired a single shot, despite every reason to do so. That is not a threat, Ambassador. That is restraint. The Krennic ambassador's retort faltered, their posture shrinking under the weight of Elias's words. Around the chamber, other representatives nodded, the truth of humanity's self-control undeniable. Elias stepped forward, his voice carrying a blend of conviction and urgency. The choice is yours as a council, and yours as a galaxy. Hold the Krennic accountable. Create measures to protect every species from suffering as we did. Or choose inaction again. Allow history to repeat itself, and humanity will have no choice but to withdraw. The chamber froze at his final words. If we withdraw, Elias continued, his tone grave, know this, we will protect ourselves. But in doing so, we may destabilize the fragile balance of power you cling to. Humanity does not seek isolation, but we will endure it if it means securing our survival. A reptilian representative from a smaller faction broke the silence. Ambassador Elias, if humanity withdraws, what becomes of us? Of the alliances you've forged? Elias met their gaze. We do not abandon those who stood with us. But without a united galaxy, the future will be one of fragmentation and conflict. Humanity has suffered that once. We will not endure it again. A wave of agreement rippled through the chamber. Representatives began voicing support for humanity's proposal. The Krennic ambassador attempted to counter, but their words were drowned out by the growing momentum. The tide had turned. One of the council's senior members, an elder of the Andralis species known for their wisdom, raised their hand for silence. Ambassador Elias, they said, their voice deliberate, humanity's journey has been one of profound suffering and remarkable resilience. This council acknowledges its failures and commits to rectifying them. Let it be known that the Krennic Dominion's actions will not go unanswered. A vote was called. One by one, the representatives cast their decisions. The motion passed overwhelmingly. Sanctions would be imposed on the Krennic, and new measures would be implemented to ensure no species could act with such impunity again. Elias allowed himself a deep, steadying breath as the council adjourned. Representatives began filing out, some offering nods of respect, others avoiding his gaze. The Krennic ambassador slithered away without a word, their once dominant presence diminished. As the chamber emptied, Elias lingered, his eyes fixed on the now dormant hologram. His thoughts turned inward, reflecting on the journey that had brought him and his people here. We are not what we were, he thought, the weight of his responsibility pressing on him. But we are still here. And as long as humanity endures, there is hope, not just for us, but for this galaxy. We will build a future where no one suffers as we did. With a final glance around the chamber, Elias turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing through the vast, empty space.